Have you ever noticed how some people seem almost disappointed when you don't fight back? They provoke you, insult you, ignore you, or twist your words. Not because they want the truth, but because they want your reaction. They expect anger. They expect tears. They expect you to lose control. And the moment you do, they believe they've won. But what if the greatest victory isn't proving them wrong? What if it's refusing to play the game at all? Today, we're going to uncover a psychological truth that most people never understand. Silence is not weakness. In the right moment, silence becomes confidence. It becomes discipline. It becomes the one thing that forces others to confront themselves. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the people who hurt you often fear your silence far more than your anger. If you enjoy videos about psychology, emotional intelligence, and mastering your mindset, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let's begin. Everyone believes power belongs to the loudest person in the room, the one who argues the hardest, the one who always has the final word. Society teaches us that confidence is measured by how quickly we defend ourselves. So when someone attacks our character, questions our worth, or disrespects us, our first instinct is to respond. We explain ourselves, we defend ourselves. Sometimes we even beg to be understood. It feels natural because our brains are wired to protect our identity. But here's what most people never realize. Every reaction you give tells the other person exactly where your emotional buttons are. Imagine someone throwing stones into a lake. If the water explodes with ripples every single time, they know the lake is shallow. But if the stone disappears beneath calm, still water, uncertainty begins. Suddenly they don't know what effect they had. That uncertainty is psychologically uncomfortable. Human beings crave feedback. We constantly look for signs that our words matter. It's why social media notifications feel rewarding. It's why compliments make us smile and criticism keeps us awake at night. We want confirmation that we have influence. Manipulative people understand this better than anyone. They don't always seek conflict because they're angry. Many seek conflict because they're searching for proof that they still control your emotions. Think back to someone who constantly criticized you. Maybe it was an ex-partner, a toxic friend, a difficult coworker, or even a family member. Did they ever seem satisfied after hurting you? Probably not, because the goal was never the argument. The goal was your reaction. Every emotional outburst became evidence that they still occupied space inside your mind. This is why emotional manipulators often become more aggressive when you stop responding. At first, they become confused, then they become louder, then they become desperate. They're not reacting to your silence itself. They're reacting to the loss of control. Psychologists often describe this as an interruption of expected behavioral patterns. When people predict how you behave, they feel secure. But when you suddenly change the pattern, their brain enters uncertainty. Uncertainty creates anxiety. That's why silence feels so powerful. Not because it's magical, because it's unpredictable. When someone insults you, and you simply smile before walking away, you've interrupted the script they rehearsed in their mind. They expected resistance. Instead, they received mystery. And mystery is something the human brain desperately tries to solve. Long after the conversation ends, they'll replay it. Why didn't they respond? Did they not care? Did they know something I don't? Were they stronger than I thought? Notice something remarkable. While they're trapped inside questions about you, you're free. Most people think silence is about hurting someone else. It's not. It's about refusing to surrender your peace for someone else's chaos. That distinction changes everything. Because anger feels powerful in the moment. Silence builds power over time. Imagine two fires. One explodes with bright flames, consuming everything around it before quickly burning out. The other burns slowly beneath the surface, producing enough heat to reshape steel. Which one creates lasting change? Real strength rarely announces itself. The strongest tree in the forest doesn't compete with the loudest bird. The deepest ocean doesn't argue with the crashing waves. Nature itself teaches that true power often moves quietly. The same is true in life. Some of history's greatest leaders weren't remembered because they shouted louder than everyone else. They were remembered because they remained composed when everyone expected them to collapse. Emotional discipline has always been mistaken for emotional weakness. But they're opposites. Weakness reacts. Strength chooses. That's an important difference. Silence is never about pretending you don't feel pain. You'll still feel betrayed. You'll still feel disappointed. You'll still carry wounds no one else can see. The difference is that pain no longer becomes permission to lose yourself. Instead of handing your emotions to someone else, you begin transforming them into wisdom. That transformation is uncomfortable. There will be nights when you'll desperately want to send one more message, one more explanation, one more argument, one more attempt to make someone understand your heart. But every unnecessary explanation keeps you emotionally tied to people who've already decided not to understand you. Some people don't misunderstand you accidentally. They misunderstand you because it benefits them. And no amount of explaining can change someone committed to misunderstanding you. The day you finally accept that truth is the day you begin protecting your energy instead of defending your reputation. Because your reputation lives inside other people's minds, but your peace lives inside yours, and only one of those truly belongs to you. As you begin embracing that silence, something unexpected starts happening, not around other people, but inside yourself. The noise you've been carrying for years begins to fade, revealing a truth about your own mind that most people never discover. And that's where our journey continues. There comes a moment in almost everyone's life when the battle is no longer with another person. It becomes a battle with the voice inside your own head. That voice is relentless. It asks why they treated you that way. It replays conversations you wish had ended differently. It invents perfect responses hours after the argument is over. It convinces you that if only you could explain yourself one more time, everything would finally make sense. But here's the painful truth. Closure rarely comes from another person. It comes from the moment you stop asking someone else to heal the wound they created. Most people spend years waiting for an apology that never arrives. They imagine hearing the words, "I was wrong. I'm sorry. You deserved better." They believe those words will finally set them free. But psychology tells us something fascinating. People naturally protect their own self-image. When someone hurts you, admitting it means admitting they are not the person they believe themselves to be. That creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, an uncomfortable conflict between actions and identity. Instead of accepting responsibility, many people rewrite the story. Suddenly you're too sensitive. You're dramatic. You misunderstood. I wasn't that serious. The facts change because protecting the ego feels easier than confronting guilt. This is why casing closure often leads nowhere. You're asking someone who avoids truth to suddenly embrace it, and that's a battle you cannot win. Silence changes the battlefield entirely. Instead of asking them to understand your pain, you begin understanding yourself. That is where real healing begins. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with heavy stones. Every insult becomes another stone. Every betrayal adds another. Every broken promise makes the weight even heavier. Most people keep carrying that backpack because they believe letting go means pretending nothing happened. But letting go isn't pretending. It's deciding you don't want to carry someone else's choices for the rest of your life. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. It doesn't always mean trust. Sometimes forgiveness simply means refusing to let another person's actions continue renting space inside your mind. That is freedom. Silence creates space for that freedom. When you stop arguing with someone who refuses to listen, something remarkable happens. You finally hear yourself. For the first time in years, you begin asking different questions. Not, why wasn't I enough? But, why did I believe I had to prove my worth? Not, why didn't they love me? But, why did I ignore the signs that they couldn't? Those questions don't make you bitter. They make you wiser. Pain handled correctly becomes education. Pain handled incorrectly becomes identity. Many people become their wounds. Every conversation returns to what happened. Every relationship is filtered through old betrayal. Every opportunity is judged through fear. Without realizing it, they build a prison using memories as bricks. Silence interrupts that cycle. Because silence isn't empty, it's full. It's filled with reflection, perspective, growth, awareness. Think about a snow globe. When it's constantly shaken, everything inside remains cloudy. You can't see clearly. But if you place it on a table and simply wait, the snow slowly settles. Clarity returns naturally. Your mind works exactly the same way. Constant arguments keep your emotional world shaking. Silence allows everything to settle. Suddenly the people you once idolized begin looking ordinary. The problems that once felt impossible begin looking temporary. The fears that controlled your decisions begin losing their grip. Not because your circumstances changed overnight, because your perspective did. Perspective changes everything. A mountain seems impossible to climb when you're standing at its base. But from the summit, you realize every terrifying step was simply part of the journey. The same applies to emotional pain. What feels unbearable today often becomes tomorrow's greatest teacher. That's why emotionally mature people don't rush healing. They understand growth has seasons. A seed doesn't become a tree overnight. It spends months growing underground where no one applauds it, no audience, no recognition, no validation, just quiet growth. Your life is seasons like that too. Right now, people may think nothing is happening. They may assume you've disappeared. They may believe they've defeated you because you're no longer responding. Let them believe it. Roots grow in darkness. The strongest transformations happen where nobody is watching. One day they'll see confidence they cannot explain, peace they cannot disturb, success they cannot take credit for. They'll wonder when you changed. They'll never realize the transformation happened during the seasons when you stopped explaining yourself and started rebuilding yourself. That rebuilding requires courage, because silence forces you to face truths you've been avoiding. Maybe you've been chasing people who only loved your attention. Maybe you've tolerated disrespect because loneliness felt scarier than being mistreated. Maybe you've confused being needed with being valued. Those realizations hurt, but they also heal, because awareness is the beginning of change. Every emotionally healthy boundary starts with one uncomfortable realization: I deserve better than this. Not because you're perfect, not because you're superior, but because every human being deserves relationships built on mutual respect rather than emotional control. Once you truly believe that, something incredible happens. You stop trying to convince people to choose you. You begin choosing yourself. That doesn't mean becoming selfish. It means becoming emotionally responsible. Instead of asking, how do I make them appreciate me? You ask, why am I offering unlimited access to people who repeatedly disrespect my peace? That single shift changes your entire future. The people who benefited from your lack of boundaries won't celebrate your growth. Some will call you cold. Others will accuse you of changing. They're right. You did change. You stopped confusing kindness with self-sacrifice. You stopped believing love requires endless suffering. You stopped measuring your worth through someone else's approval. And once that happens, something else begins to change. The silence that once felt lonely starts feeling peaceful. You no longer fear being alone, because you've discovered something far more valuable than constant company. You've discovered your own voice, and once you truly hear it, you'll never again allow someone else's noise to drown it out. Yet this inner transformation is only the beginning, because once you master silence within yourself, the world around you starts responding in ways you never expected, and that's where the real shift begins. There is a strange moment that happens after you've been silent long enough. At first, you think nothing is changing. The people who hurt you continue living their lives. The world keeps moving, no dramatic apology arrives, no instant justice appears. For a while it feels as if your silence accomplished absolutely nothing. This is the moment where most people give up. They mistake patience for failure, they mistake peace for passivity, and they return to the same arguments, the same emotional battles, and the same exhausting cycle that kept them trapped for years. But beneath the surface, something extraordinary is happening. You're no longer becoming the person who simply reacts to life. You're becoming the person who chooses it. That difference changes everything. Imagine standing in the middle of a violent storm. The wind screams, rain crashes against your skin, lightning splits the sky. Most people spend their entire lives trying to stop the storm. But emotionally intelligent people learn something different. They stop fighting the weather. They become the mountain. Storms don't ask mountains for permission. They come, they rage, and eventually they leave. The mountain remains. Your silence is that mountain. Not because it removes pain, but because it teaches you that your identity is stronger than your circumstances. The opinions of others become weather, temporary, changing, unable to define who you are. This is where confidence is truly born. Not from praise, not from success, not from winning every argument. Real confidence comes from knowing that even if the world misunderstands you, you still understand yourself. And that kind of confidence cannot be taken away, because it was never given by someone else. Most people spend their lives borrowing confidence. A compliment gives it, a promotion gives it, a relationship gives it, social media gives it. Then one criticism, one rejection, one betrayal, and suddenly everything collapses. Why? Because borrowed confidence always expires. Built confidence lasts. Silence is one of the greatest builders of inner confidence because it teaches you to survive without constant validation. Validation is addictive. Every time someone approves of us, the brain rewards us. We begin chasing approval without even realizing it. Soon our happiness depends on how other people respond. If they clap, we smile. If they criticize, we question ourselves. That's not freedom. That's emotional dependence. Silence quietly breaks that addiction. Instead of asking, do they approve of me? You begin asking, do I approve of myself? That question changes the direction of your life. Because when your standards become internal instead of external, manipulation loses its power. Think about every manipulative relationship you've ever seen. Whether it's a toxic partner, a controlling parent, a jealous friend, or a narcissistic coworker, they all depend on the same thing, your emotional dependence. The moment you no longer need their approval, their influence weakens. Not because you've defeated them, because you've stopped feeding the system that gave them power. That's why people often react strangely when you become emotionally healthier. They don't miss the old version of you. They miss the version they could control. There's a difference. Growth often disappoints people who benefited from your insecurity. That's a difficult truth to accept. Not everyone celebrates your healing. Some preferred your brokenness because it made them feel stronger. Some preferred your confusion because it made you easier to manipulate. Some preferred your silence when it came from fear, but become uncomfortable when your silence begins coming from confidence. One looks like surrender. The other looks like independence. And independence unsettles people who expected lifelong access to your energy. That's why boundaries often reveal the true nature of relationships. The people who genuinely love you will respect them. The people who only benefited from your lack of boundaries will resist them. Your silence becomes the boundary they cannot cross. Not because you hate them, because you finally learned to protect yourself. Imagine your emotional energy as a bank account. Every argument is a withdrawal. Every unnecessary explanation costs interest. Every sleepless night over someone else's opinion drains your balance. Eventually, you become emotionally bankrupt. You wake up exhausted before the day even begins. You lose motivation. Joy disappears. Peace feels impossible. Then one day you make a different decision. Instead of investing your energy into proving yourself, you invest it into becoming yourself. Suddenly your emotional account begins growing again. You have energy to learn, energy to create, energy to forgive yourself, energy to pursue dreams you abandoned years ago. This is why silence isn't about punishment. It's about redirection. Every ounce of energy you stop spending on toxic people becomes available for your future. And that's where real success begins. Because success isn't revenge. Success is freedom. Freedom from constantly explaining yourself. Freedom from living according to someone else's expectations. Freedom from chasing acceptance in places where it was never meant to exist. Ironically, once you stop trying so desperately to prove your worth, people begin noticing your worth, not because you changed for them, because you finally stopped changing yourself to satisfy them. Authenticity carries a quiet confidence that performance never can. People feel it before they understand it. They notice you're calmer, more grounded, less reactive, harder to manipulate, They may not know why, but they'll feel the difference. Because emotional stability has a presence. It doesn't demand attention. It naturally attracts respect. Not everyone will admire it. Some will resent it. That's okay. You're no longer living to be understood by everyone. You're living in alignment with yourself. And alignment creates something louder than any argument ever could. Peace. Real peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on perfect circumstances. The kind that survives disappointment, criticism, loss, failure, even betrayal. Because you've learned the greatest psychological secret of all. Nobody else can permanently disturb a mind that has learned to govern itself. That doesn't mean life becomes easy. There will still be difficult days. There will still be moments when anger whispers, fight back. When pride says, prove them wrong. When hurt begs for one final explanation. But wisdom quietly reminds you, not every battle deserves your presence. Some victories happen the moment you decide not to fight. And as your silence becomes strength, something remarkable begins unfolding in the lives of the people who underestimated you. They start seeing the consequences of their own choices, not because you sought revenge, but because life has a way of revealing truth over time. There is one truth that time teaches every person, whether they want to learn it or not. Life has a way of revealing character. Not in a single day, not during the argument, not when emotions are running high. But months later, sometimes years later, when everyone has to live with the consequences of the person they chose to become. The people who constantly sought conflict eventually discover that conflict follows them everywhere. The people who manipulated others eventually find themselves surrounded by distrust. The people who built their lives on lies spend years trying to remember which version of the story they told. Meanwhile, the person who quietly chose growth is building something entirely different. Not because life was easier, because their energy was invested differently. This is why silence is never really about them. It's about you. It's about protecting the future version of yourself. Imagine your life as a garden. Every thought you repeat becomes a seed. Every habit becomes water. Every choice becomes sunlight. Now imagine spending every single day watering the weeds planted by people who hurt you. Their insults, their betrayal, their rejection, their opinion. Soon those weeds grow so tall that they block the flowers trying to bloom. Many people spend decades tending weeds they didn't even plant. They wake up every morning thinking about someone who stopped thinking about them years ago. They replay conversations that cannot be changed. They fight imaginary arguments inside their minds. Without realizing it, they sacrifice today's peace to relive yesterday's pain. Silence interrupts that cycle. Instead of watering resentment, you begin watering purpose. Instead of feeding bitterness, you feed discipline. Instead of nurturing revenge, you nurture growth. And slowly, almost without noticing, your life begins changing from the inside out, not because the world became kinder, because you became stronger. People often ask, what's the best revenge? It's an understandable question. When someone deeply hurts you, your heart naturally wants balance. You want justice. You want them to understand what they did. You want them to feel the same pain they caused you. But here's the irony. The moment revenge becomes your life's mission, they still control your future. Your schedule revolves around them. Your emotions revolve around them. Your decisions revolve around them. Even your success becomes dependent on their existence. That's not freedom. That's another prison. Real freedom arrives when they no longer occupy the center of your story. Think about your favorite book. The greatest stories aren't remembered because of the villain. They're remembered because of who the hero became. Your life is no different. The people who hurt you were never meant to become the main characters. They were chapters. Some painful, some unforgettable, but still only chapters. The book continues. Too many people stop writing after heartbreak. They close the cover and assume the story is over. But what if the chapter that nearly destroyed you becomes the chapter that introduces your strongest self? History is filled with people who transformed suffering into purpose. Not because pain disappeared, because they refused to let pain have the final word. That choice belongs to you every single day. Every morning you wake up, life quietly asks the same question. Who are you becoming today? Not, what did they do yesterday? Your future doesn't care who betrayed you. It cares who you're becoming because of it. This is why emotionally resilient people look different. They smile differently. They speak differently. They carry themselves differently. Not because they've never been broken. Because they rebuilt themselves carefully. Brick by brick, boundary by boundary, lesson by lesson. Silence became the workshop where that rebuilding happened. Away from applause. Away from validation. Away from people demanding explanations. There is incredible power in becoming someone who no longer needs to announce their healing. You simply live it. People notice. Not because you tell them. Because peace has a presence. Confidence has a presence. Self-respect has a presence. You don't need to convince the world you've changed. The way you carry yourself becomes the evidence. One day, someone who once underestimated you may cross your path again. Maybe they'll expect the same emotional reaction, the same insecurity, the same version of you they once controlled. Instead, they'll meet someone calm, someone grounded, someone who smiles without bitterness, someone who no longer feels the need to prove anything. That moment isn't satisfying because they feel uncomfortable. It's satisfying because you finally realize you don't need them to recognize your growth. You already know how far you've come, and that realization is priceless. Because self-worth that comes from within cannot be stolen by criticism. It cannot be manipulated by rejection. It cannot be shaken by temporary failure. It belongs to you. always. Remember this. Silence doesn't mean you have no voice. It means you've learned that not every person deserves to hear it. Silence doesn't mean you've accepted disrespect. It means you've stopped negotiating with people committed to misunderstanding you. Silence doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've become focused. Focused on your peace. Focused on your purpose. Focused on building a life so meaningful that the opinions of those who try to break you become nothing more than distant echoes. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. Your silence is not meant to punish anyone. It's meant to protect the person you're becoming. Because one day you'll look back at this season of your life. You'll remember the nights you wanted to react. The moments you almost sent that message. The times you nearly returned to people who had already shown you who they were. And you'll quietly smile. Not because you won an argument. Not because someone apologized. But because you finally chose yourself. That decision changed everything. It changed your relationships. It changed your confidence. It changed your future. Most importantly, it changed the way you see yourself. And once you learn to respect your own peace, no amount of noise from the outside can ever take it away again. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, remember this: not every insult deserves a reply. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every misunderstanding deserves an explanation. Sometimes the strongest response is no response at all, because your silence isn't empty. It's filled with wisdom. It's filled with discipline. It's filled with self-respect. And those qualities will always speak louder than anger ever could. If this video helped you see silence in a new way, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs this message today. You never know whose life might change because they learned that true strength isn't found in the loudest voice. It's found in the quiet confidence of someone who finally refuses to give their peace away.